How would you have responded on October the 8th if you were running the Israeli government?
Ultimately,
the biggest terror attack on your people ever.
Ultimately, it is within the interests of everybody, especially those who identify as Israelis currently, to end Zionism.
In this video, Lowkey exposes Piers Morgan's pathetic defense for Rupert Murdoch's war connections, and it turns into one of the most brutal back and forths Piers has ever faced. From the jump, Lowkey refuses to play along with Piers' one-sided framing. Every time Piers tries to corner him with the same tired "do you condemn" trap, Lowkey flips it and starts dropping facts about Rupert Murdoch's financial ties to Netanyahu's political machine. You can see Piers scrambling, dodging, deflecting, acting like it's all irrelevant, but Lowkey just keeps pressing him. What makes this hit harder is how Piers gets exposed for trying to act neutral, but the second his own employer's funding of illegal settlements come up, he suddenly wants to change the subject. No more tough questions, no more moral high ground, just pure damage control. So make sure to watch till the end to see how Lowkey exposes Piers Morgan's pathetic defense of Rupert Murdoch's war connections.
Zionism has dispossessed and disempowered and killed people on an industrial scale. Its maintenance requires 4 generations of Palestinian refugees scattered throughout the Middle East, the highest population of refugees there is in the world. Its maintenance requires the constant repression of Palestinian hopes for a better world.
Which I think is completely wrong. So I believe all Palestinian people should have exactly the same rights as you and I and every Israeli.
And that requires the end of Zionism. So therefore you support the end of Zionism.
Well, I don't agree with what has clearly been a form of occupation, okay? But putting that to one side, I also don't agree with Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis, funded by Iran, armed by Iran, launching wave after wave after years and decades of terror attacks on Israel.
Do they have air forces? Do they have... Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question.
Let me ask some questions.
Do they have air forces and air defences?
Let me ask.
Do they have air forces and air defences?
So it sounds like you're defending what they do.
No, I'm saying there is a complete difference between one of the most powerful armies in the world, which has literally a key unit within the Israeli military, Unit 9900, is the visual unit which uses satellites in the sky that can pick off a bit of chewing gum on your shoe, okay? You're talking about actors that are shooting rockets which do not have precise targeting against one of the most powerful air forces in the world.
It sounds to me,
F-15s, F-16s and F-35s. You're talking about asymmetrical warfare. But you know the thing that Israel doesn't remember, and which Israel has to know and must know, that winning a war is not about killing on an industrial scale the weakest among the population you are targeting, which Israel excels at, which is the essence of Zionism. Winning a war is about the largest amount of people being convinced of your viewpoint. If we use that metric to understand this war, Israel has lost in Gaza and it will lose in Lebanon because Israel has more enemies around the world than ever before. More people are critical of Zionism than ever before. More people understand it to be essentially an anti-life ideology, which is causing mass human suffering.
But Lowkey, at the same time,
so Lowkey goes straight for the root here. Zionism. Not just the state, but the ideology fueling all of this. He lays out plain. Mass displacement, generations of refugees, and brutal military control are not bugs in the system. They're features. And when Piers tries to jump in with the whole "I support Palestinian rights too," Lowkey just drags him right back to the contradiction. Those rights are impossible under Zionism. Then the moment shifts. Piers tries to make it sound like Lowkey's defending Hamas, which is ridiculous. Lowkey is clearly pointing out the absurd imbalance. F-35s versus homemade rockets, and how Israel excels at targeting the weakest, not the strongest. It's not about justifying anything. It's about exposing how one of the most powerful militaries on the planet is waging war on people who have no air force, no defense system, nothing. That's the definition of asymmetrical warfare. And Piers wants to pretend it's a fair fight. And that final shot, saying Israel's already lost that war in Gaza, not militarily but morally, it's brutal and it's true.
Hamas, Hezbollah, are wedded, and make no secret of being wedded, to the destruction of Israel. The destruction. That is a nihilistic form of genocide. The very genocide that its supporters, like you, would say is being waged against their people. They are explicit We want the destruction of Israel. And they have tried to enact this on October the 7th. And Hezbollah's response the next day, within hours, was to unleash rockets on Israel as well and to carry on doing it for a year. At some point, Israel obviously was going to respond with massive force to the biggest attack on its people. Obviously, they were going to do that. Hamas knew they would do that. Iran, who were funding it, knew they were going to do that. Hezbollah knew they would do that. Hezbollah knew if they kept rattling the Israel cage with their rockets, that they would get a response of the kind we're seeing now. What they underestimated is that Israel would be quite as successful as they're being right now with Hezbollah and taking out all its command leadership. And you can feel that the momentum has switched now, where Israeli people, in particular, and all the polling, are now beginning to go back to supporting Netanyahu because they believe, rightly or wrongly, but they believe Hamas and Hezbollah when they say, we want to destroy Israel. They believe it, and they believe that they have to defend themselves. Do you condemn what Hamas did?
You've already asked me that.
Not directly, you haven't answered.
I will not condemn people based on Israeli military talking points.
Okay, good.
But I have a question for you.
I have a question for you. You don't condemn mass murder?
Obviously, I condemn mass murder.
But you won't condemn it by Hamas?
You're talking about a specific political context in which the information
No, I'm talking about
clear.
Mass murder of people on October the 7th.
By the Israeli military.
You see, it's just absurd.
So I have a question for you.
I think you lose all credibility when you say that.
I have a question for you. I'm not concerned about whether you think or don't think I have credibility.
Because I don't come at this from supporting either over the other.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely
Because I have a question.
What's your question?
Rupert Murdoch, News Corp International, which employed you for several years.
Yes.
Which actually
it employs me now.
It employs you now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting to the issue.
Yes.
Now.
What do you think the issue is? I saw what you tweeted. What does it have to do with me?
Not my tweets. I have a question for you. News Corp International had a charitable arm which funded the Jerusalem Foundation, which builds illegal settlements.
What's it got to do with me?
Illegal settlements in
What's it got to do with me?
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
What's it got to do with me?
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking about Rupert Murdoch.
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking about Rupert Murdoch.
This has never been shown on British media. This is a letter from Netanyahu's political office. And Bridget may well recognize the handwriting of Benjamin Netanyahu here. It is a list of individuals that Netanyahu considered to be funders of his political campaign. There is a name on this list. The name is Rupert Murdoch, your employer.
You know what, Lowkey?
It seems he funded Benjamin Netanyahu. That's an issue.
This is where Piers gets completely exposed. He runs the usual script, lists of Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and then demands a forced condemnation like it's some kind of purity test. Lowkey doesn't fall for it though. He makes it clear that he condemns mass murder, but refuses to play along with Israeli military framing. And that's what really rattles Piers. And then it flips. Lowkey throws the heat right back at him. He brings up Rupert Murdoch and exactly how deep those ties go, connecting his funding to illegal settlements in Netanyahu's campaign. Piers starts panicking once he mentions this, dodging every question like it's fire. Suddenly, the guy demanding moral clarity doesn't want to talk about his own boss bankrolling the occupation. It's a full-on dodge fest from Piers, because Lowkey isn't just calling out double standards, he's naming names. And that's when the whole act falls apart for Piers.
You know what, look, it's not an issue for me.
It's an issue, and actually it's in the interest of objectivity that you state it.
Rupert Murdoch can speak for himself. If you've got a problem with him, take it up with him.
I do.
I can tell you categorically, he has never had a single conversation with me about anything I've put on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Sam kindly resigned from the Times newspaper because of Murdoch's investments and bias towards Israel. This document, this letter, clearly shows Benjamin Netanyahu noting Rupert Murdoch, considering him to be a funder of his political campaign.
You're a rapper, yeah?
That's an issue.
You're a rapper. Do you condemn P. Diddy?
Yes.
Great. You see how easy it is? You take it out of your obsession, which is that you hate Israel so much you can't condemn anything that people do to them?
We see the situation differently.
Not really.
My loyalty is to the people.
I agree with you a lot more. I agree with you a lot more than you realise.
I view myself as loyal to the people of the camps, to the people under the bombs. I do not view myself as loyal to somebody that would end up on a list of potential funders of Benjamin Netanyahu.
I like Rupert Murdoch enormously. I respect him enormously. And if you
and you won't condemn his funding of Murdoch, of Netanyahu, you won't condemn his funding of Netanyahu.
You don't condemn mass murder.
You don't condemn mass murder.
Oh, I do.
Condemn the Israeli military for mass murdering Israeli captives.
Had you bothered to watch this program for the last year, you would see I've regularly condemned them.
It's not condemnation.
No, but you don't think that what Hamas did was murder, do you? You think it's resistance?
I think the vast majority of humanity perceive asymmetrical warfare by developed militaries against... The vast majority of humanity are post-colonial subjects, Piers. They came out of decolonization. Okay. So their conception of these issues is just not the same as yours, unfortunately.
And wrapping this up, it's not even a debate anymore. It's just a meltdown. Piers spends the whole segment demanding moral clarity from Lowkey, but the second his own boss's name comes up, he flips the script, deflects, and hides behind saying he never told me what to say. Lowkey literally lays out documented financial links between Rupert Murdoch and Netanyahu, and all Piers can do is just dodge, joke, and bring up P. Diddy like it's even relevant here. He tries to wrap it in civility, saying he respects Murdoch, but can't bring himself to condemn the funding of illegal settlements or the political machine behind Israel's war crimes. That's not objectivity, that's just protecting power. Speaking of media that covers for power, are you getting tired of getting news from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing, and another says the complete opposite? How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, whether it's left, right, or center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get a 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights in media bias and political trends. So stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.